I'm going to call the Lee County Charter Review Commission meeting of Tuesday, April 9th, 2024 to order. This is our last meeting. 18 months has gone really fast. We have everybody here. Lisa King is excused tonight. She had a death in her family. So let's all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I don't have any cards for any public comment. However, is there anybody here this evening that wants to make public comment? Any of those behind you, Eric?
There's someone here. Would you like to speak in public comment? Not tonight.
No?
Okay.
No? Okay. Well, then it's our turn to talk. So we have before us what we've been bantering back and forth for the last 18 months about voluntary annexation. Tonight, board members are going to have a discussion on it and decide if we're going to pass anything through and then vote on it. So I'm sure all of us have a comment to make, so let's raise hands or let's start somewhere and go around the room. Who wants to start? No?
Well, we really haven't heard a lot of comments from the public over the last 18 weeks. About the only thing we heard any comments on was the annexation proposal. And we did hear how people that are impacted by the current annexation policy are asking for some change. And I, for one, support giving the voters an opportunity on the only issue they've raised in terms of what they're concerned about here in the county, give them an opportunity to have it on the ballot and vote and see what they want. I think that there's room for change in the policy. I think there's an opportunity for a win-win for everybody. The way the current annexation policy works, there are winners and losers, and the ratepayers, particularly out on Pine Island, are losers. We've lost millions of dollars of infrastructure. We're going to lose millions of dollars more in revenue from properties that are annexed that are in our service area. And so I think if we had an opportunity to sit down at the table with all the parties involved before the annexation takes place, it's better for everybody. And so all we're doing is making a decision whether or not to give voters an opportunity to vote it up or down. And so I, for one, would vote for the voters to have that opportunity.
Thank you, Noel. Anybody else? It's pretty quiet tonight.
We pretty much beat it to death.
Andrew?
Yeah, I will just add my piece to this, and I don't think anyone's going to be shocked. I've been pretty vocal of being concerned with the potential for property rights issues when it comes to inserting politics into a process that I don't think needs the process. Of all of the components that this tries to deal with, I think the one that probably has the most valid concern, but I think belongs to the legislature to handle, is the utilities and what needs to happen there with those service areas in capital during those annexations. I don't think that's a county process because this is happening across jurisdictions all over the state. And when we looked at, or we heard from a number of the groups who've come to speak about in favor of this, there seems to be a belief that because they had a service area drawn 50, 100, whenever it was, years ago, 10 years ago, that they're entitled to and should continue to serve that area, regardless whether that's in the best interest of the landowners or the community at large. And I think even as the Pine Island water utility representative told us, if Lee County was able to provide services in a more cost-effective manner, he still believed that it would be in the best interest for them to provide those services. And I just don't see that to make sense. I think that the desire should be to provide the best services at the most cost-effective rate as possible, especially for taxpayers or ratepayers. And I think that while this is well-intentioned, and I appreciate and I've enjoyed the conversation and discussion, that this is not going to be the solution, and I couldn't support it. And just to the point of putting this up to the voters to vote, I was open to having conversations and having the voters vote on all sorts of things. An elected mayor, like we are doing with the superintendent this cycle, just really evaluating the structure of government. So I have no fear of letting the voters vote on these subjects. I was way ahead on those. But I think because of the property rights concerns, I don't know if the voters have the right to eliminate property rights of a resident. So that's why I think this shouldn't go forward.
Randy, you were going to say something?
I just say we've talked about it and beat it to death. We can all give our opinion, but that'll be the vote.
I would say there's no bigger advocate for private property rights than I am. However, I also see two sides to this, and I've been torn on this issue since we brought it up, and I've been torn on it the entire time. There is the private property rights of the homeowner. However, there is also the rights of the community and the government to be compensated for infrastructure loss and a tax-based loss, in my opinion. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I just think there's maybe three sides to this issue, and not maybe two.
Eric?
Thank you, Chairman Shaw. As you know, I spoke pretty early on this, and although I did come in with an open mind, I promise, that's the whole point of public hearings and discussing this with everyone, which, by the way, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, the time that we've spent together on this and the other issues we've talked about as well. My initial thought is being, again, on the end of the political process several years back, I was reluctant, again, I didn't like the concept of this, but I definitely kept an open mind, and I think that I want to thank the county attorney's office too, and Commissioner Aiken on getting, I think, the best job possible with this. I'm still not supporting it. A couple of the reasons why, what I keep hearing is there's expansion that happens based on the belief that we're definitely going to be, that whatever district it is going to keep serving a particular parcel. And what I didn't hear is there's no real requirement, and we're not requiring any special district to do their due diligence. And you heard with the Pine Island Water, and that's the one I'm going to focus on because they spoke the most about this. I'll never forget the words. I was reticent to speak with the city before expansion, before these things were being done. And I can't speak for the other communities. I know it may not be as simple, but there has to be an effort to reach interlocal agreements on these issues before going forward with projects. Again, the testimony, like I said, showed that they had, at least in certain circumstances, had an opportunity to reach interlocal agreements and just simply chose not to do so. I took into account those that came from the cities, the city managers, city attorneys' offices, and talking about the statute, which, again, I believe is meant to be controlling in this situation, and it does address voluntary annexations perfectly. No, but it does address it pretty well. This obviously is going to create, to me, another layer of government where I'm not seeing the benefit. And as a final thing, and this is kind of hard for me to say because I'm not trying to say anything that the voters won't understand this issue, but on the general public input about this, I took it to mean, and I think that a lot of people will read this, however it might be written, to believe that it will stop annexations and will limit growth in some way. That's the impression I got from the folks that spoke about this. So I think it just would be a very hard to put that into however many words you have to explain it in a way where I think that the average voter will understand exactly what it is. So again, although I appreciate the issue, I do think it's adequately addressed with what we have in place today, and I'm not going to be supporting this on the ballot. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I can understand Eric's concerns and some of the other ones. Now, this doesn't stop annexation. It doesn't stop it. It doesn't stop property rights. But what happens is, because I do heavy construction, so the Pine Island people, I know what they went through because I've worked for them. I do build roads, so I know what it's like when you build a roadway and then all of a sudden annexation happens and now the county's not getting that tax base anymore. I've run multiple lines down 6 Mile Cypress because it used to be county, and then when the city came in and annexed it, now there's a county water line that really doesn't service many people. They're fixing to do the same thing on Ortez. They're running a county water line and 3 city water lines. I'm putting them in, so thank you. So this doesn't stop annexation, but what happens is developers will come in. I don't want to talk about county politics or city politics, but a developer comes in and buys a piece of property that's right next to ours, and they agree that their building regulations will be less stringent than the county. They're going to push to annex that piece of property, of course, because developers are looking for the best bang for their buck. And so what happens is you get development that maybe not meet the county standards, but would meet a city's massaged standards. So all I want to see is that where the county, because they talk about home rule. Well, guess what? It was county home rule before the city came along and wanted to annex it. So whoever is there first, if you buy a piece of property that's in the county, there's rules and regulations, ordinances that you should abide by. And you shouldn't be able to change that just because you bought it and were able to kind of get to the city's, people and help their campaigns, or whatever it is you did to gain favor. So I think it's important that the county be the responsible party. And then if it's in best interest of Lee County and Lee County's taxpayers, that piece of property be annexed and it can be serviced by whatever city that is, and it's not being serviced properly by the county, have at it. That's a great idea. But let's not water down, our annexation policies to where somebody can come in and say, okay, I'm going to annex this piece of property. Well, fire stations, they were some of the first supporters for this in the very beginning was all the fire stations because, again, Estero builds a fire station to service the people in that area. And all of a sudden, the city of Estero comes along in. And I don't know how that worked down there. I'm not involved in that. But they were very vocal in not wanting to have, in having an amendment. And there's a reason for it because, again, they go out and spend their money to build facilities to service an area that all of a sudden can be taken over by someone else. So as long as the cities come in and they do their work, due diligence with the local utilities like Pine Island or Estero Fire or whoever else, and they can be made whole, that's a great idea. But that's what we need to do. And I think that's why I support this wholeheartedly. And I think we should pass it. And let the voters make their decision.
Okay. Randy?
Thank you. Thank you to the committee. It's been a pleasure to serve all of you. My perspective is always less government and more property rights. Obviously, that's the business that I am in. I am a little concerned and overwhelmed at the lack of public input at 2 of the public hearings that we conducted, especially Lehigh and Estero of all people. There was no one. Adequate public notices were presented to all, and I understand this is a more technical issue than some, but I feel this issue is a very isolated issue that concerns a very, very small group of Lee County citizens. And while I understand those concerns and I appreciate the value and the passion which it was presented, I find it difficult to implement something either in front of the commission or on the ballot that affects a very small, isolated group of citizens. And I'm not sure this is the platform for which that to occur. So I would agree with some of my colleagues here this evening that With all due respect, I don't think I can support voting in the affirmative on the voluntary annexation issue that we have in front of us. Whether it is the first option or the second option, I do not feel that it's required from this committee, and that the respective municipalities work out their differences before it happens. And thank you very much.
Maribel?
You know, I believe, and I'm not, politics, that if we're here addressing an issue, it's because there is an issue. And I do understand that, as you say, there may be a minimal, but we're not taking rights away. This is about implementing a structure that can help the city and the people that live in the city. This is not about removing rights. I own property, and obviously I want my rights protected. But I think this is something that is going to allow us to structure something that that if there were to be agreements between, and those agreements would have been respected, we would not be here having this type of conversations. So I do believe that, I think that all I hear is that we're taking people's rights away. We're not. It's not about taking property rights. It's implementing something that is going to help the city develop and grow into a much nicer, smoother transition. I don't know if I'm saying correctly, but I'm hearing all you saying removing rights. This is not about taking away rights. It's implementing something that can help everyone, all of us in here. Because there is a lot of big developers that come, and because they're big developers and they have all this money, they feel the right that they can do and take away and decide. And that's what we're trying to do right now, is implement something that can help everyone do things correctly. That's my thought.
Randy?
I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm going to. I've been in the real estate and development business for 40 years, and I've been in this community 24, and I've never heard this an issue, really, until that fiasco down at Daniels and Tree Line. Other than that, in all these years, and I think we're creating a problem and a burden to the property owners that doesn't need to be there. And I just don't necessarily agree, Ms. Sanchez, that once you put another layer of government and things you have to do, you are taking rights away. So, like my namesake Randy, I can't support this either.
I'm going to look up the word namesake.
Anybody else? I have to echo what Noel said, and he said it very well. And Daniel's Tree Line was one of the issues. There's been issues out in Cape Coral, Pine Island for a long period of time. So what we're doing, if we pass this and move it forward, is providing a better process for both the city and the counties to work together. I'm sure there are other issues where this has popped up that we don't even know about, but they're out there and they exist. So it's a matter of having the appropriate entities, the city and the county, working together for the benefit of everybody and all the special districts besides, and helping them work together. You know, we brought this, we had all kinds of discussion over the 18 months and brought it forward, heard from a lot of people on both sides of the fence. I'm going to vote for it, and I would suggest that we move it forward and let the people, let the voters decide what they think is appropriate. Anybody else? No.
One of the things we heard was, we heard some comments about really you don't go spend millions of dollars without doing planning. Well, that's just the problem. here you can do all the planning in the world, and you could have your client base say, yeah, we want you to serve us, but there, until you actually have signed a long-term contract with that person or that entity, then all that planning doesn't do any good at all, because here you plan for all of the infrastructure necessary to serve this facility, and all of a sudden, the facility is either sold, or the people that are the current owners decide, well, I can get a better deal over here with the city or with the county, and so therefore, even though I'm in your service area, these service areas are given out, the fire district service areas are given out by the state. The water company, that license is with the county. So this isn't just something that's in random, these service areas. And then when they spend millions of dollars in infrastructure to serve that area, and then someone comes along and takes that away from them, that's really not fair. And there's no mechanism now to deal with that, to where you come out of it, everybody comes out of it whole, because there's no mechanism where everybody sits down at the table now before the annexation takes place.
Anybody else, final comments? Marianne?
I've been listening to everyone's comments, and I agree with, we don't want to add a layer of bureaucracy. In my mind, I was thinking more of a checklist that everybody just has to check off before they make the final agreement. And, I think that's what this amendment supports, a way that that you covered all your issues and dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's. Whereas the previous amendment, which so many of the mayors loved and didn't want to change, or the one that's already existing, I guess was a little more general and resulted in these issues that Noel brings up and with Cape Coral and all. So I think that we don't want to make a loophole and let developers just change their city or county status so that they can develop differently and make more money. We don't want that. So I think there should be a process. It just can't be willy-nilly. So I would vote for it.
Anybody else? Ron?
I'm a guilty party, evidently, because I've annexed 3 pieces of property into various cities, and I've got a 4th one underway right now in Charlotte County. So I have to tell you, I didn't sit back and look at, wow, I can get away with this over here that I can't over here. It was a mathematical analysis on who has the services closest to me, what's it going to cost me to get them there, who has the capacity to extend this based on the planning that they've done. So you sit and analyze all that when you go through it, not just, oh, I might can get 2 more units an acre. It's not that simple.
Right.
It's very, very involved and very integrated analysis with a number of experts to make sure that you understand all the ramifications of annexing something into one of the cities. The downside that's always touted is that there's a much higher tax burden for doing this, okay? You factor that in too. So it's a lot of analysis that goes into these things. It's not just simply, I think I can get away with something, being facetious, if I annex into Fort Myers or the Cape. That's not the bottom line at all. So, well, I'll have engineering firms, planning firms, and a land use attorney.
For the municipality?
No, I do it for myself.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, no, they don't, no,
You do all your due diligence then?
yes, to try to figure out what's best for the property that I have in question. So it's kind of hard for me to get real excited knowing how that process has worked. It's not the freebie lunch that you might think it is.
Does everybody do that? Does every developer do that?
Can't speak for everybody else.
Any other comments? Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as we've gone through this process, especially as we've had these public hearings, there have been there's a couple things that have stood out to me. So I do think that this is an issue that has occurred in certain places, all right? I know that it has occurred. I'm aware of specific locations where the failure of the parties to get on the same page has resulted in waste at the end of the day. Let's just call it what it is, waste and burden on taxpayers. But, and I also believe that as drafted, and I'm probably a little bit partial because I spent so much time working on it, it's probably good policy, okay? That the idea that is stated in here, which is everybody should sit down and figure out how these are going to be provided and where it's going to come from and who's going to pay for it, that probably should happen. And as Ron sort of stated, when he's the developer, that's what he does. As someone who's represented a number of different developers, I can tell you that not everybody does that, but the ones who are successful most of the time do generally do that because it is their money and they don't want to throw it away, and they're making an important decision. So if the goal of this is to create good policy and ultimately at the end of the day to stop waste, to prevent waste, I still have some concerns about it, right, as it's drafted or in any format. And my reason for concerns are, we talked about the private property rights issue, and listen, I'm in favor of that too. I think most people who are in this room probably are. I think if we're being honest, though, private property rights, there's always a balance, right? I mean, we have zoning laws that, restrict your private property rights because I don't want to live next door to a Walmart. I want to live next door to another single-family residence if I live in a single-family residence. And so we accept certain limitations on those private property rights in order for the betterment of the community. And so the question is here, is this limitation better for the betterment of the community? And my concern is really twofold with the amendment. It is that, number one, as we've sat here and gone through this process, I had really hoped that we would get more input of people who really thought, hey, this is an important issue one way or the other, or people who were affected by it, or people who could talk intelligently and in a meaningful way about scenarios where there has been a problem. And we did hear some of that, but there's really a lack of that in a lot of the hearings that we had. There really wasn't a lot of people coming in to talk about, we really need this, and here's why. And I think other than sort of the anecdotal evidence that some of us are aware of, we're sort of lacking that information as a body on which to make a decision. The other thing that I have a concern about, being a lawyer, is that, I'm concerned that this is not going to make less waste, as it would just create more fighting between lawyers and municipalities about ultimately whether the requirements of the amendment have been met. If somebody wants to annex out, okay, well, now I have to spend more time doing this, and then have I met the requirements of the amendment such that, the county must approve it or whatever, and then there winds up being other concerns there. So that is my concern, is that even though I do think it's good policy at the end of the day, does it accomplish what we want it to accomplish? And is there a big enough need, is there a big enough concern to warrant it? And the problem is I just haven't heard enough folks, other than the anecdotal evidence of which I'm aware of in the past, talk about what the huge need is. So I have concerns that by enacting it, we wind up not doing anything to solve an overarching need and creating the potential for fights between lawyers, if you will, despite the fact that I do think it's good policy. So I know I said a lot, but
Could get voted down off the ballot.
sure, it could. But my take on this is and I think everybody else has a different idea about, do we put it on the ballot or do we not, or do we send it to the county commissioner or do we not? I mean, I think we're sort of the governing body, and we're tasked with the idea, or at least I think I'm tasked with the idea of reviewing this and thinking, all right, is this the right thing to move forward or not? And I think we have a better understanding of it realistically, having sat through all these meetings, than your average voter seeing it on the ballot is going to have, most likely. So I say all that just because those are my concerns with it, after having heard everything that I've heard. I still think it's good policy, but I'm not sure that it doesn't create other unforeseen problems, if you will.
Anybody else? So the next step in the process is, we want to do this by hand or home?
We will do a roll call vote, and I'll let you all know that only one item can go forward if an item goes forward. 2 items cannot go forward. So I just want to let that be.
Are we first going to vote to see if we want anything to go forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you be kind enough to reiterate how each vote counts?
Yes.
Currently, as the chairman is requesting, there will be a vote as to whether or not this item actually goes forward. It will not be broken out yet. So depending on the first vote, if there are the requisite either 9 or 12, then you'll go to the next step, which is to vote on A or B.
So in order to push anything through, we need how many votes?
9 for the board, 12 for the ballot.
Okay.
And that's not prorated because there is an
It is not
absence,
prorated.
correct?
No, it is not. Joe tried to do that calculation. I told him he couldn't, but he tried anyway. And it's still the same number.
Okay.
And that's because of the way the charter is drafted,
Correct.
correct?
So you're saying it's not a percentage?
It's
It's supposed to be a percentage,
3/4 and
Right.
4.
but 3/4 of the votes.
3/5,
there's-
yes.
There's only,
So
what,
it's 9 or 12.
13 votes here,
No,
There are 14
There are
votes
14
here.
14 votes here.
yes. So it's 9 out of the 14 or 12 out of 14.
Okay.
Any more questions about procedure?
Yes means send it forward, no means
We're going to vote, yeah,
not.
so.
I'm saying, clarification.
The first vote, Randy and everybody, is whether we're going to pass anything through. If we vote yes and pass it through, then there's a second vote as to whether it's going to be A or B.
I understand that, but yes means pass it, no means
Correct.
don't pass it.
Yes, that is correct. Ron?
Just to clarify Noel's question, which is a good one, Section B4 specific, any proposed charter amendment or revision that receives an affirmative vote of 3/5 approval of the entire membership of the Charter Review Commission shall be submitted and so forth. So it's the membership, not the attendees.
Correct.
So that's what y'all are
Nine.
saying.
Yes, 9 or 12.
Okay. Done the math. Done the math. Any more?
If anybody disagrees with my math, let me know.
I'm afraid to.
Remember, she's from the county attorney's office.
Yes, that means I'm not good at math. That's what that means.
All right, so the first vote we're going to take is whether we're going to pass anything through, A or B, doesn't matter, whether we're going to pass anything through. Are we going to do a roll call?
Yes.
Simple majority, this one.
We need 9 to pass. 3/5
Oh,
is
okay,
9.
I'm sorry. I thought this one was a simple
Right.
majority, then the
I
next one was
understood
9 or 12.
Or do you want to go?
No, that's fine.
All right, we're going to start the roll call vote at this time.
Go through.
Ms. Sanchez,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
Yes.
Mr. Feithaler,
No.
Ms. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. Baraco,
No.
Mr. Besserer,
No.
Mr. Mercer,
No.
Mr. Sun,
No.
Mr. Aiken,
No.
Mr. Andrus,
Yes.
Mr. Congress,
No.
Mr. Inge,
No.
Mr. Chris,
No.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes.
The proposal dies.
Okay. Then we're done.
Yes.
I move the meeting be adjourned.
No,
Oh,
before,
wait,
I'm not,
before?
wait a minute. We got a lot to do before that. Ron, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to touch base on something before we do adjourn. A, as I enjoyed meeting some of you guys for the first time and serving with you, but there's been a lot of comments made, some in the press, about how the process is flawed, it fails, it's worthless, you people are bums. I read it all. The fact that we didn't have 2,000 people down here beating on our doors, to me, says that the charter is working. So, there's a few activists that had some opinions about certain things, but there's not a groundswell of people sitting down here demanding that the government of Lee County be changed. I believe that's why we didn't have such a huge turnout. Even when we went to all these various locations, I think people by and large feel that the county works. So I believe that's the reason why we didn't have as much
Well said.
attendance as you might think. Thank you.
Eric?
Totally agree with Ron. The one thing that I felt like maybe we should consider doing differently in the future is when we have our on-site meetings around the county, that we haven't already decided what the issue is before hearing from everyone. I recognize people had a chance to come here first and talk about what concerned them. The other issues that we talked about, yet like someone mentioned, the elected county mayor. No one really had a chance on those on-site to talk about it, and it seems to me that it would be good to get at least more places first before we decide what issues we are or not going to talk about.
So I will tell you, and Mr. Andrus knows this, we did that before.
It didn't work either.
I don't want to discourage you all. I want to let you all know this is a great process. The issue is that this is the community that you are in, right? I've been doing charter review for the 4th time. And I can tell you, the audience that shows up is the audience you did see. And no matter how we try to get it out there, we get it on the news, this is what happens. That does not mean your service is not good. There are some items that have appeared on the ballot because of charter review, and they did pass. So the process works. Sometimes you all we think it works fine. There's no need for change.
So how old are you if you've done 4?
And are you going to be here for the next one?
I am not.
You're living on the edge.
That's why Joe is here, because I will be out the door. Joe will take over. But I've enjoyed meeting every one of you. Some of you I've known from before, Mr. Hinge, and we've worked together. Mr. Knoll, I think this is your second charter review. I hope to see that you all will not think this is a waste of time, but, if you're still around, that you will consider serving again. And so I want to thank you on behalf of Lee County and the County Attorney's Office for your service. I think you all did a great job. Last time we did not pass anything through either. So it has nothing to do with the charter. I think we had like 3 issues that we were voting on, and none of those passed through. So it's just the process, and the process does work.
Kevin.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank you and Andrew for your guys' leadership on this. I'd also like to make sure these meetings went smoothly and we all had a chance to discuss and hear each other's thoughts. I'd also like to thank the staff, all of the county staff. I'm sure the clerk's office staff too. I know you guys are working late, coming out here after work and making sure that we're on TV and mic'd up, and it's just a fabulous job by all the staff, so thank you guys very much.
Anybody else? I have to echo those comments. I've enjoyed immensely this process. This was the first time I served on it. I thought we did a great job. We got a lot of great, intelligent comments from people that were involved. And it was only this issue. I was a little surprised we ended up with just one issue. But I thoroughly enjoyed it and appreciate everybody's involvement.
I'd like to thank Nathan for doing an outstanding job as chairman. And
thanks, sir.
I think you did a very smooth process throughout. You did a great job.
It was.
That being the case, well,
Please,
now
no, you need to eat the food before you leave.
nobody can leave, according to Andrea,
I can't take all that
until
food back.
all that food is now gone.
We will produce a report. Well, the chair will produce a report, and we will present it to the board. We'll make sure that you all get a copy of that, so you can just read it for your enjoyment. But read it anyway. Thank you very much for your service. Thank you.
Now I need a motion, no? Two.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, guys.